Boom. So, quick intro on our speaker, Josh Gort here. Been in the business 11 years, I believe. Is what less than 20 G's away from being in the million club. So, gonna have that first $1 million of Cutco sold soon. Josh also was DM for a few seasons back in the day. I believe his he was it 3 or 4 years. How long was it, Josh?
2.5 years. Yeah, sorry, I didn't send you a bio. Two and
Like
a half years
700K, right?
did about 800 as a district. And then probably as a sales manager, also helped influence probably like $2 million in sales. So that's not on my reports, but helped Danny win P Banquet, and he would say helped him get promoted to DVC as well.
There you go. So yeah, Josh has played an integral part in a couple of divisions for a while, and as you know, was our coordinator for quite a bit. And Josh just a great person to be around. Really fun, always positive. He also makes music, so check him out there, Ransom Jones, baby. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, and Josh is even doing 75 hard right now, which is a difficult fitness and mental challenge, really. So encourage Josh with that. Yeah, that's our speaker, Josh. And one thing I love about Josh as well is the fact that we just spent like like 7 days together between the last 2 weeks. So that's pretty cool. Always fun hanging out with Josh, and I'm excited to hear his message on keys to growth and yeah, I'll let Josh take it away here.
Awesome. Well, first, I just appreciate your guys' time and attention, and anybody listening to the recording here. My goal is to just help you get the most out of this message, and really help elevate your business and also your life. And I've done a lot of mentoring, I've done a lot of coaching, I've paid probably over $100,000 in the last 10 years on personal growth, maybe more than that, something absurd. But I've heard people spend 100 grand in a year on coaching and mentoring. And I think I don't share that with you to like impress you by any means. I just share that with you to let you know some of this content that I'm going to deliver is from that. Right. So, take it for what you will. And what I'll say too is, some of this stuff might not apply to you. Some of it might really hit you, and some of it might be stuff that you're going to apply later. And just take what you can from this call and implement it right away, because the overall message of the call is growth, and it's some different strategies that I've used to grow personally and professionally. And some of it is just having awareness to that growth. Like where do I need to grow? Where is my focus at? Where are my blind spots? Because sometimes I know when I was coming up in the business, I didn't necessarily know what I needed to get better at. I was just like, yeah, it sounds great. I need to get better at all this stuff, which I think, Nick's done a great job, and our leadership group has done a great job with kind of giving you those stepping stones and those building blocks. And, I would lean into that, right? It's interesting. Like, these calls are free. Like they could probably charge, $100 a call and it'd still be worth it. Right. But you get it for free. And sometimes I feel like when people get things for free, they don't value it as much as they do when they do pay for it. But imagine if you were paying me $1,000 for this call, how would you approach this call differently? And just have that mindset, right? Hey, because I would hope you think your time is valuable, right? I hope you want to get to a point, maybe your time's not worth $1,000 an hour right now, but you want to get to a point where your time is worth $1,000 per hour. And that's actually a great place to start, with selling more in less time. What is your time worth? Do you know what your time's worth? How much do you value your time? Are you investing your time, or are you just spending your time? Are you wasting time? Or are you, when you're working, are you spending your time, or are you investing your time? I like the idea of investing my time. I invest my time into growth. I invest my time into learning. I invest my time into being curious and how I can get better. You're investing your time right here. And then when I'm with people, I tend to be sharing my time with them, right? I try to never waste time. And yes, is there times where I do probably waste time? Yeah, but I try to minimize that time, and also try to do it in times that maybe aren't an income producing time. So with, hey, what's your time worth? A good way to figure that out is we track the number of hours that we work at shows. So that's an easy metric to use, right? You could say, hey, I work 40 hours a week and I sold this amount, and you could break it down. Let's say you sold 4K in a week, right? What's the math on that? You could just take 4,000, and let's say you worked 40 hours to create that. Your time's worth 100 CPO per hour. And then, if you're at 50%, right, you just divide that by 2, and that's what your gross time is worth, right, before taxes. And then you could look at like, hey, what are my expenses? And that's what your actual time is worth. But hey, what do you want your time to be worth? Have you ever thought about that? So if you haven't, just write down a number. What do you want your time to be worth? Because having some awareness around this will help you move in that direction. And I think that's going to be one of the themes of the call, is awareness. Does everyone have a number? What they want their time to be worth?
Yep.
Cool. You mind sharing, Seth, what you want your time to be worth?
Yeah, sure. Now, I don't know how long in the future it's going to be, but that $1,000 per hour sounds pretty awesome. So,
right? And so basically, if you can calculate, and it tends to be easy if you kind of do it over a month time span, just calculate how many hours you're working. I would also include your drive time in the amount of hours that you're working. I would include phone time. I would include maybe any time that you're working on the business, like studying scripts and things like that, because that's all your working time. You just figure out that number of, hey, this is how much time I'm actually working. And then how much am I selling in a month based on that? And then I can figure out my number of hours, or my dollar per hour that I'm working. And then whatever that number is, hey, what can I do to increase that number? And some of it might be, I was talking with Joey about hiring an assistant. And, I was like, hey, you might not think you need an assistant right now, but there's people that you could pay to do things that maybe are lower value activities, where it's like, if you're phoning for an hour or 2 hours or 5 hours, that's going to create way more income than you maybe updating your CRM or updating your database or doing your laundry, right? Does anyone here get paid to do their laundry? All right, cool. But you get paid to make phone calls, right? Because when you set appointments, you actually make that money by going and selling on those appointments. So, one thing I'm working on is hiring an assistant to be a house assistant. So they're going to help with like laundry. They're going to help with, cleaning. They're going to help with grocery shopping, meal prep, especially with the push coming up. With the push, I would be thinking about it now as, hey, what do I need to eliminate, or what do I need to do before the push actually starts?
Josh freeze for y'all too, or just me?
Did I freeze, Joey?
Hasn't frozen for me.
You guys can still hear me? Just
Yep.
Tuck, you're frozen. What can I do now to eliminate that stuff that I might not need to do during the push, so that during the push, I'm only focused on selling? Obviously if you're in school, right, you're still going to do school, but I would challenge you to have a big push, because then by having a big push, you're actually going to have, you're going to sell even more throughout the rest of the year by challenging yourself during the push. So those are a couple of things on time. The next thing that I like to do, it's a awareness type exercise. And who here has read The Miracle Morning? Have you guys all read that book or know what I'm talking about? Okay, if you haven't read The Miracle Morning, I would say definitely recommended reading, but it just talks about having a solid morning routine. And, one thing I would challenge you right now is, what is your morning routine, right? Do you have a morning routine? Do you have certain things that you kind of do to tee up your day? And if you don't, you do have a morning routine. Maybe it's like, I wake up and I check my phone. I go on I don't know what it is, right? But there's some sort of morning routine that people do have. But what's a more effective morning routine that you can have that's going to set up your day in the right way? And one of the things within The Miracle Morning, he talks about basically 6 activities that you do in the morning. He takes about an hour to do these activities, about 10 minutes on each. He calls it savers. So it's silence or meditation, affirmations, visualization, exercise, scribing or like journaling, SAVE. Oh, and then reading for 10 minutes basically. So, what are you reading? What are you doing to grow right now? And I'm sure you guys are doing something, but hey, where can you up level that? And with the exercise that I'm going to give you right here, I want you to draw this here. So let me can you guys see a screen? If you can see your screen, just draw this little circle. So basically it has like 5 on top and 5 on bottom. And I could share this document with you guys after the call as well. But basically you just write family and friends, personal growth and development, spirituality, finances, career and business, significant other or romance, fun and recreation, contribution and giving, health and fitness, and physical environment. And what this is, it's basically the wheel of awareness. So your life has different portions, right? You're not working 24/7. And it's a exercise to gain some awareness on where you are in your life and what you can do to take your life to the next level. And you might be like, well, what's this have to do with actually selling more in less time? I would argue that if you're happier as a person, you're going to sell more in less time. Would you guys agree? So this is going to help you have some awareness on, hey, what do you need to do to improve as a person? So just take I'll kind of just run through the categories again. And if you don't have a wheel, maybe just take notes on these. And I'm going to just rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of these categories. 10 being like, it can't get better than this right now. And 1 being like, this is awful. Like, I need to really change. And then, 5 is in between. But but rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. So first is family and friends. Where would you say you're at with your relationships with your family and friends? Next is personal growth and development. Where are you at?
Question. Are we putting like percentages or what for what?
Scale of 1 to 10. So if you drew it out, you can draw a line where, like, let's say I'm at a 5 in my spirituality. I would just kind of draw a line where I think the 5 is and just write 5. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Yep. So next is spirituality. Where would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? And spirituality doesn't necessarily, like, some people may or may not believe in God, right? But like, you could still be spiritual without that, right? Meditation, things like that can go into it. Finances. Where are you at in your finances? Your career and business, right? Where are you at in where you want to be versus where you are? And sometimes you might be like, well, I'm in school, I eventually want to do this thing, but I'm selling knives right now. No worries, right? What's cool about Cutco, wherever you are, wherever you end up, you're gaining skills that are going to move you in the direction of where you want in the future. So, are you on that trajectory with what you're doing? And then are you fulfilling your potential here with Cutco? Significant other or romance, do you have a dating life going on right now? Or do you have a girlfriend or boyfriend or how is that going if you do have that? Fun and recreation, right? Are you doing things each week and each month that are exciting? Contribution and giving. Are you giving back at the level that you want to give back at? I mean, imagine having your best push ever and being able to donate $1,000 or more to charity, or maybe it's $5,000 more to charity, or maybe it's doing something where you're going and volunteering somewhere at a charity that you really care about. I know, like Mike Muriel, he's raising money for St. Baldrick's by just shaving his head. So he's growing his hair out and then he's going to shave it. Right. So maybe with contribution and giving, it's just finding something that you do find meaningful so that you can give back to. Health and fitness, right? I could talk for hours and hours on health and fitness and how that just impacts every other area of these. And then physical environment, that's like your home, your office. Hey, are you living where you want to live? A lot of people just kind of live where they live based on default decisions. And I would challenge you, like, hey, what's your environment like? Is it organized the way you want it to be organized? Is there other things you can add to it? So that's just a kind of overview on that. But what this does is it gives you some awareness of where you're at. And basically, if you drew the wheel, if you were to connect the lines, you kind of saw the second picture. A lot of times people will come up with something like this, or maybe it's higher and lower in different areas. But if you put that on a car, how well would that roll? Probably not too good. Be a messed up, probably crash pretty easily. And so wherever you're at, what I'll say is awesome. Because sometimes you could do this exercise and be like, man, I feel like I'm not where I want to be. That's not the point of this exercise. It's not to feel self-pity or feel bad about yourself. Or maybe you're like amazing. You're like, man, I'm like 9 or 10 in almost all of them. If you've rated yourself high in all of them, I would just challenge you, like, hey, how can you maybe even just 10x those? But look at your lowest category or maybe your lowest couple categories. And what would it take to just increase those maybe 1 or 2 points? So let's say you rated yourself as a 3 in finances. What would it take to move up just a little bit in finances? Maybe it's just creating a budget. Maybe it's tracking your finances a little bit better. Maybe it's, hey, I want to get a $1,000 paycheck, or hey, I want to get, I know one of my goals this year is a $10,000 bonus check. I'm like, that would be exciting. But what is it for you that would just maybe move the needle a little bit? And you could do this with each area. You can go, hey, what would it look like to move a little bit up the scale? But usually if you take your one that you're the weakest at, it'll magnify all the other ones. For me, I wouldn't say health and fitness was a low end, but I could feel I was a little bit complacent in January. And so for me, I knew I needed something to get out of that. So that's why I chose to do the 75 hard challenge. And it doesn't force me, but I chose to do 2 workouts a day as part of the challenge, because that's part of the challenge. It's to do 2 workouts a day. One has to be outside. And so with that, it's up leveled all my other areas just because I have more energy. And if you have more energy, you're going to naturally just have more energy for every other area. And then what you can also do, we won't take time on this call, but what does a 10 look like in each of these areas? And by the way, a 10 right now is going to be different maybe 6 months from now, right? It might be like you could do this exercise annually or every 6 months and gain some awareness on, hey, where do I need to improve? But what's cool about it is it'll change, right? Because it's almost like the story of the guy spinning multiple plates. It's like he's spinning 8 different plates, and one plate stops spinning and it might go down and crash, but it's easier to keep all the plates spinning as opposed to letting one stop and then having to start all over. And then the other thing I would encourage you to do, look at the ones that you're highest in and what would make those a 10. What can you do to increase or up level those? And if you're like crushing it in a certain area, usually there's a reason why you're crushing it in that area. And look at, hey, why am I doing really well in that? Maybe I'm doing really well in school, or maybe I'm doing really well in my family and friends, or maybe I'm doing well in with my relationships. Because a lot of times those strategies on why you're doing really well there can help up level the other areas. Usually you probably have some sort of plan, or you've probably thought about it, or you're more intentional about it. One of the biggest things I've learned coaching with Jason is where focus goes, energy flows. Cool. Any questions on this stuff that I covered so far? All right. So now the next thing is some Cutco stuff, right? And what's great about, I love rating on a scale of 1 to 10. So if you were to take, let's say, new customer, Cutco owner, handling objections, upserving, where would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 within those areas? And then if you want to add in a few, like maybe phoning, closing, and referrals, so take those 6 or 7 areas. So rate yourself with your scripts on a scale of 1 to 10. And what I would say when you're rating yourself in this area and these skill sets, do your results reflect your rating? I remember I think it was a conversation with Curtis, and he's like, yeah, man, like if you're not selling a lot of, sets, you're actually not good at new customer. like, you just need to get better at selling to new customers. And lo and behold, I focused on that and got better at it and sold more to new customers. And then even talking with Jason this year, he's like, yeah, if you're not selling a lot of upgrades, like, you got to get better at the upgrade pitch, and so it's having the being humble enough to, or I don't know if humble is the right word, but just kind of having enough awareness to go, hey, I actually do need to get better at that because I'm not getting the results at it. And pick, hey, what is the thing that you feel would move the needle the most for you within your business? And if you're unsure, I would say probably new customer, probably upgrades. Because some people, they want to learn how to get better at selling cookware or flatware, but they're not good at selling to new customers yet. And so get better at the things that are going to move the needle the most for you. And that's another great awareness question each campaign to ask. Hey, what part of the business do I need to work on to move the needle the most? And I would say anytime, it's always focused on increasing your average order. What am I doing to increase my average order? And some of it's like, these are just more questions and mentality. It's like, you have to, your business better than I do. If I have a one-on-one call with each of you, I can sit there and dive in with you. But we're not necessarily taking the time to go over those things right now. And do you know your numbers? If I asked you, hey, what's your average order? Do you know it offhand? Do you guys have it? So Joey, what's your average order? Okay. Yeah. No worries, by the way, if you don't know it, but get to know it. Do you know what your closing percentage is on when you're doing service calls or when you're doing demos? Because by doing that, you have something that you can measure to improve, or by knowing that you have something that you can measure to improve. And then what it is at that point, it's just, hey, focusing on improving those skill sets, because sometimes it's easy in sales to get caught up in like the CPO or the numbers. But if you focus more on the long term of improving the skill sets and the activities, that's how you're going to create massive growth, as opposed to like, oh, I feel bad because I didn't sell what I wanted to sell this week. But did you do the activities that it was necessary to sell what you wanted to sell this week? Like I was actually calculating some numbers on my service events, and I was like, oh, like I averaged basically 7 appointments per event. I was like, oh, if I just averaged 10 appointments per event, I would sell, I think it was like $4,000 more. I was like, oh, wouldn't that be nice? And then if I increased my closing percentage in my average order, I would have sold an extra like 14 grand doing the same amount of work. I mean, maybe doing a few more appointments, but it's like the same amount of working days. So do you know those numbers, and do you know what you need to do to grow? And it's another thing that I do is stat tracking. So are you doing some sort, I get pretty nitty gritty with my stats, but I have like can you guys see that okay, by the way?
Yeah.
So I have like my event shifts, and my averages. And then I have, track how much I sell on the phone, track how much I sell on service calls, service events, and then the totals. And then I also just pay attention to what I sold last year to what I sold this year. And because calendar changes a little bit each year, but it's like, hey, what was different that I sold, $8,000 here and 4,400 here? It was probably like a different event. I think I worked, or I might have had I know this was a month I had like a 4K order, or a week where I had like a 4K order. So it was like one bundle deal can make the difference. But it's like, That's where I'm at for the campaign. And then with your goal for the year, it's like, hey, where do I need to adjust? So like right now, I'm looking at my goal for the year. I'm like, okay, cool. Like what went well? And let's just take a moment to answer this question, because you guys all know where you're at for the year so far. What went well so far this campaign for you? Just take a couple notes or some highlights. We'll take like 30 seconds here. What's gone well this campaign? Maybe you had your first show, or maybe you had first few sets at shows, or I don't know exactly what it is, but what's gone well for you in the Cutco business? And then, you can take some more time to journal on this, but you can also use these questions anytime you work an event, anytime you work a service event, anytime you do appointments. You can go, hey, what went well? And what that does is it forces your brain to focus on positive psychology and look for what's gone well. And then the next thing is, what would I change? Or what would I do differently? And this question, it's more designed to not look for the negative, because you can easily say, oh, like, what didn't go well, right? It's more so, hey, what would I adjust? What would I change? Maybe I would make more phone calls. Maybe I would do more appointments. Maybe I would start closing on the Cutco kitchen. Maybe I need to listen to more audios or role play more. If you don't have some sort of role play buddy, I would suggest getting somebody on the team that's just as committed to growth as you and role playing some of the scripts. Because there was a number you set out to do this campaign, and there's a number you're going to hit. Are you hitting the number that you set out to do? Because if you're not, there's a gap of maybe execution, maybe a gap of skill set. And being able to identify that now, you won't get to the end of the year and go, hey, my goal was 100K or 200K or 300K or 400K, but I only sold 50% of it. You'll be able to make those adjustments now for the summer campaign, for the fall campaign. Any questions on that so far? Do you guys have a push goal yet?
I just have a year goal.
Cool. Have you broken down your year goal like to month goals or campaign?
Yes. I don't have it right in front of me, but yeah. So my goal is like 100K this year. So I just divided that by 12.
And one thing I found that's helpful is looking at your schedule and knowing like when you're going to work more, setting a little bit higher goal, and then knowing, hey, I might work less here and adjusting the goal based on that, because it's like your summer is probably going to be busier with events, and definitely like July, August, September. So you're going to, it's because you might be working like a fair that's literally like 7 days straight. So if you're at a show that many days, you're going to naturally just be selling more. So you might set a higher goal that month based on the number of days that you're working, as opposed to just being like, well, I'm going to sell, 2K a week. Cause I mean, how often have we come out with those averages where it's like, hey, I'm selling 2K a week? Because there's going to be months, if you look at like any top reps months, Like I was looking at some of the quantums recently that they send out to CSPs. And I was like, oh, like this person sold more than me, because we had like 20K month, or I think I had like an 8K January, they had a 20K January. And then I had like a 20K February, they had like 20K February, but then they had like a 40K March and I had like a 20K March. And I was like, oh, that's the difference. Right. So just being able to identify like, hey, which months out of the year are you going to be working more and are you going to sell more? And you can also look at your numbers last year to kind of use as reference, like, oh, that month I sold the most. Maybe that's a month that I'm going to go big with. Like me, I know August, September, and December are always some of my biggest months. And then I also am going to make May one of my biggest months just because the push week. And so just knowing that I'm already thinking about it, and and it might not be a ton of time that I'm thinking about it, but where focus goes, energy flows. And the other thing, it might be counterintuitive. It's I just have this on my mind all the time when I'm working. I want to sell as much as possible in as little amount of time as possible. Because sometimes people will set goals of like, hey, I want to have like a 5K week or a 10K week, or hey, I want to sell 3K for the show. But if you want to sell 3K for the show and you sell like an ultimate set, you're already at 3K basically. So by only setting the goal as 3K, you could be limiting yourself on what's possible and what your potential is. You know, I remember Cody King in our mentor group. I think his biggest week in 2019, I think it was 2019 or 2020, one of his biggest weeks was like an 18K week. And then he popped a 32K week. And it's like, you might be like, oh, well, you know, how do you go from 18 to 32K? Sometimes it's easier to make that much of a quantum leap than it is to go from like 18 to 20. But if he would have just been focused on 20K, he would have probably only sold 20K. But since he was open to creating as much CPO as possible, he created as much CPO as possible. I know last year there was a stretch of 10 weeks where I sold like 75 grand. And my focus was just create as much CPO as possible during that time. And guess what? After I was done doing that, I was like, dang, I could have sold more, right? Because I was looking at some of those questions. What went well? What could I have improved on? And so one of the things I do strategically in my business is I take notes on that, and then I put it in my calendar 2 or 3 months before in like the next year. So literally I have a reminder in October of all the things that I can be doing in December to sell more. Like, oh, get my marketing set. Oh, do this. Here are all these little reminders that I need to be focused on. You know, it's like every event that you go and work, do you have like a little checklist of things that you need to make sure you have? Like, how often have you shown up to an event and you're like, I didn't bring that thing, you know? And it's easy to keep a mental checklist, but do you have like, you know, maybe these are the things I need. Anytime I travel and go out of town, I kind of have a checklist of here's what I need to do before I go out of town. Here's what I need to do when I get back from coming out of town. You know, and I always like to have work scheduled when I get back, just so I'm diving back into work. Okay, so a lot of random things here, but all things I think about when selling more in less time. Another thing, and then I'll wrap up with a couple exercises. Do you have things in your schedule outside of work that you're looking forward to? I promise you, if you fill your schedule with things that are not work that you're excited about, you will sell more. It's crazy. My friend Adam Conroy, he like got married one year, took like 3 weeks off to go to Ireland, and he was like doubling his sales. I was talking to Greg, our division manager at the time. I was like, yeah, I don't know what Adam's doing. He's just taking a lot of time off, it seems like. And Greg's like, yeah, maybe you just take more time off. I don't know. But what's interesting, last year I took probably 3 months off and I still sold, 80K more than I've ever sold in a year. So it's like, do you know how much you want to be working versus how much time you want to take off? How cool would it be to take some time off and go on like an epic adventure? I know one of my friends, Hunter, in our mentee group, he's going to take like 2 months off to go travel this summer. He's like, yeah, it's like hot in Houston. There's no shows that we want to work. So I'm going to just travel for 2 months. So he's sold a lot in the spring. He'll sell a lot in the fall to make it worthwhile to do that. And maybe it's not, 2 months, but when is your next vacation? I saw Caden just, went on vacation. Oh, no surprise. Caden's selling a lot. And it's always cool to see. So, and in between maybe that big vacation, what are small things that you can be doing that you're looking forward to? Because when you fill your time with things that you're excited about, you'll naturally sell more because you have less time to be thinking about selling. So when you are selling, you're 100% focused on that. Literally, like Danny, I had a call with him earlier today. He's like, yeah, are you excited about vacation? I was like, I haven't even really thought about it. I go to Mexico next week, but I'm in the zone on work mode. I'll think about vacation when I'm on vacation. Because when I'm working, I like to be working. And when I'm on vacation, I like to be on vacation. I don't like to do what a lot of people tend to do. When they're on vacation, they're thinking about work. When they're working, they're thinking about vacation. I like to do what I'm doing when I'm doing it. So if you don't do that, I highly, highly encourage you to do that. And I mean, I could go on about that. So for things in your life to change, you have to change things in your life. Right? So for things to change in your life, you have to change things in your life. And a lot of times people are interested in their goals or interested in change. They like the idea of change, but are you committed to change? Are you willing to do the work, willing to go through the struggle? And here's the crazy thing. You're going to try new things and you're going to fail at them. And a lot of people, they fail and they don't continue. They don't actually do the work to keep going. So what is your relationship with failure? How fast can you be failing? Because the people that fail more, they are learning more and they're able to adjust and implement. But also don't just fail. Make sure you're learning from a mentor, or learning from somebody maybe on the events team that already kind of can assist you on the path. Because if you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and not getting the result, that's insanity. You already know the things you need to do, right? No one needs to tell you. You probably hear, some of you might be on this call and be like, oh yeah, I know I need to do that thing. Then why don't you do it? Why don't we follow through on the things that we know we need to do? I mean, anyone got an answer to that? Why do we not do the things we know we need to do?
Not a strong enough why.
Yeah, maybe not a strong enough why.
Procrastination is human nature.
Procrastination is human nature.
Negative thinking.
Negative thinking, right? Maybe fear, right? We're afraid of something. And we might even be afraid of what other people will think of us if we're successful or if we change. But what I'll tell you, no one cares. Nobody really cares that much. And if they do, great. But they're not gonna judge you for it. And if they do, oh well. Procrastination. That actually touches on one of the things I was gonna cover. What's something that you're procrastinating on? So what's something you've been procrastinating on, and do it, right? Schedule it after this call. And the limiting beliefs or negative thoughts, what can you do to adjust those thoughts? And I promise the more action you take, the more that will subside. But pay attention to what are those negative thoughts, and be open to ideas that come in from the universe of like, oh, like, I mean, there's been times where I'm selling and I'm like, oh, like, I don't know if I should show this thing. I don't know if I should go for this upsell. But then I just do it anyways because it's the thing I know I should do. And I do it, and then I close a bigger order. Or sometimes I do it and it doesn't work. But at least I did it. And that's the thing, focusing on the discipline of the action as opposed to only, for some reason, not implementing. So last couple things, and I know it's a lot of tangents. To know and not to do is to not know at all. So if you listen to this call and don't take any action from it, you literally waste an hour of your time. I really encourage you to make sure you're doing. I already know that. Are you doing it? And if you're doing it, have you mastered it? And do your results prove that you've mastered it? Last night with 75 hard, I had to get 2 workouts in after 10 o'clock. I did not want to do them. But I committed to myself that I want to do this thing. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this is I had a mentor ask me, hey, what's something that you can do to double your confidence? And I've been kicking around 75 hard in my head for a year. I'm like, yep, 75 hard. And he's like, well, if that'll double your confidence, when's a good time to start? I was like, well, I don't want to start now. I've got a rep trip coming up. I've got a payoff dinner. I've got all these things where I would want to do certain things that I can't do as part of the challenge. As part of the challenge is like not drinking alcohol, things like that. But if you want to hear more about that, I'll tell you at some other time. So just having the discipline to follow through on those things. And do you follow through no matter what? Do you make it not an option to not follow through? And one of the things I've been noticing for myself is there's times where I'll tell myself I don't feel like doing something. That's exactly when I feel like doing it. That's one of the things I use as a mantra. Hey, if I don't feel like doing it, that's exactly when I need to feel like doing it. So pay attention to those things. Like, hey, if you tell yourself you don't feel like doing certain things, like how can you adjust that? And then last couple of questions I want you to jot down. What's something that you can celebrate for yourself this campaign? I find a lot of people, they wait till the end of the year to celebrate, and then they don't. I remember there was a time where I got to the end of the year, I grew, but I didn't feel good. I was at year-end banquet and I just didn't feel good about my goal, didn't feel good about myself because I didn't hit my goal. I still sold more than I ever sold. And I had a conversation with Seth Kinzer. He goes, well, how often are you celebrating along the way? He's like, do you celebrate when you're hitting some of those milestones along the way? So wherever you're at right now, it's good to actually celebrate. Do something to reinforce good behavior for yourself, because we are, you could literally program your mind for success. You can program your mind for looking for things that you want. And if you find yourself focused on things you don't want, use those as triggers to think about what you do want. So if you have something that bothers you, use that to then think about what you do want. oh, this thing I'm thinking about, oh, I'm going to think about what I do want. What's something you do want that you want to focus on more? And maybe in Cutco, it's like, hey, I want to sell more sets, or I want to sell Cutco kitchen, or I want to sell a certain thing, or I just want to attract more high quality customers to the booth. You know, it's crazy. I went cross training with Jason, and he just attracts high quality customers to the booth. And I said, hey, what do you do to do that? He said, I just think about attracting high quality customers to the booth. And then it happens, and that reinforces his belief. So last thing is the start, stop, continue exercise. And I highly recommend doing this every month, or every, reviewing it every campaign. You've probably, being in Cutco long enough, you've probably done this exercise. But what's a habit that you need to start doing? What's a habit that you need to start doing? It could be personal, it could be business. You could pick one for both if you want. What's something that you need to start doing? What's something that you need to stop doing? Maybe personal or business. Maybe you need to stop procrastinating. Maybe you need to stop complaining. Maybe you need to stop, I don't know what it is. Stop eating a certain thing, or stop talking to a certain person. And then what's, or one thing that came up, stop giving up on yourself. The last one is, what's something you need to continue doing? Because I think so often with growth, sometimes we focus on, hey, well, there's so much to improve, because we come from a paradigm that, like, with growth, like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough because I need to get better. It's not that. You are good enough just the way you are. You're not your CPO. You're not your finances. You have a lot of value to offer. But coming from the paradigm of like, hey, I'm already doing well, and what's something that I need to make sure I'm continuing to do? And that, my friends, is how you sell more in less time, and focusing on some of those growth habits. So having more awareness, where focus goes, energy flows, rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in some of those Cutco skills, and then making sure you're checking in on those different areas and asking yourself, hey, what went well? What can I improve upon? And making sure you're celebrating along the way. And man, I can't wait to see some of the adventures you go on, some of the stats on the sales reports, seeing some of you on the national sales report, and being some of the most elite future Cutco reps in the company. And it's awesome. And I'm excited to embark on that journey with you guys. I have a couple minutes for Q&A if you got any questions, but I know we're a couple minutes over time, but we had a couple minutes technical difficulties at the beginning.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Josh. Whoever's got any questions for Josh, soak it up. It's not every day we get Josh on one of these. So.
And it doesn't have to be what I covered. It could be like, hey, I had this problem with a customer. How would you handle it? Or it could be on planning or whatever.
So I have a question for you, Josh. So for you, when it comes to, when you look at your campaign plan, how many, I guess, exciting things are you doing each month or each campaign typically?
Depends on the campaign. This campaign Mexico was definitely, the big thing. But I also went to cross train in Arizona. So that was like, it was like working, but it was like a vacation kind of deal as well. And then I if I'm working a show out of town, I try to like do something to explore a little bit. But I would say doing something each campaign, like in June, I think I might be going to a personal development conference that I'm looking at being like a crew member to. And then I'm always looking at like concerts that I'm fired up to go to. I'm like, oh, there's a concert. Cool. Like, does that fit my schedule? There was a concert that I wanted to go to, but it just didn't work for the schedule. And then I'll get notifications for concerts and I'm like, oh, would that work? And like, I got one today and I texted to a friend. I was like, hey, we should go to one of these. And none of them are in Chicago. And so he was like, well, they're not in Chicago. I'm like, so what, man? Like, it's called a road trip for a reason. So finding things that do excite you, and maybe if you're unsure, just trying a few things that do excite you or that you would be excited about, and then plugging those into your calendar at some point. And then just making sure you're taking the time for it.
Gotcha.
And I would say that would be a huge action step. Like, hey, when are you planning your next adventure or your next trip? And maybe it's not like a trip, but maybe it's like, hey, I want to just do an epic dinner with my family, or whatever you value the most, spending time and energy on that. When I did a conference last year and it was called Spiritual Day. Part of the day, we just literally took like food baskets and gave them to people. And then we did random acts of kindness. And you're like, oh, this feels amazing. And you're like, why don't I just do random acts of kindness more? Like, oh, I could do that. It's awesome.
Like,
any other questions? Or if you had a question or something you're thinking about, or maybe it's just a takeaway from the call that would add value to everyone or on the recording. Did you guys enjoy the call? Was it
Oh, yeah,
everything you hoped it to be? Okay.
Yeah.
Just
Thank you.
melted your face off so much. I'll share that document with you. It's actually a 10-page document. It goes over a little bit more about the Miracle Morning, and then also how you can up level in each category. Just frames it with questions that I was asking. And then you guys all have my number, so feel free to reach out. I know Joey's training here today, and Seth, yeah, more than happy to help out in any way. I know you get to talk to Nick a ton, I'm sure, because being an assistant coordinator or assistant event manager, I don't know what the exact title is, but I appreciate all you do with that, man.
Thanks, amigo.
sweet. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Josh. Let's give a quick little round of applause for him. And y'all know how to reach out to Josh if you need anything. Thank you to everybody who was on the call and those listening at home now. And yeah, if you need to reach out to Josh or me, you know how to get a hold of us. And yeah, we'll see y'all in 2 weeks. We're gonna go enjoy Mexico. Probably be a little bit darker next time you see us. And in 2 weeks, I'll be back on here teaching the ultimate upgrade. So look forward to seeing y'all in the next one, and hope you enjoy the day.
One more thing, would love to just see you post in the group me. Biggest takeaway from the call, I think it would just add value to the group. Also give you some awareness on what you need to implement, and then just might encourage more people to hop on as well, because I would say, one of the things, you guys are being leaders by being on the call, and you guys are probably, I wouldn't say don't need the call, but it's like, like the people that need to really be on the call, like, they need a little bit more encouragement, where you guys are like, cool, like, yeah, there's a call, free content, awesome.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, greatest compliment you can do for your speaker is to one, implement the knowledge, and then two, put in the put in the chat what you took away from it. So definitely make sure to do that. And even y'all watching the call down the road, even if say you watch it a few days later or even a week later, still post in the chat, because then that shows it's like a little hat tip to Josh. So
Hey, I'll see you guys.
adios, y'all.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Take it easy.